This is Talk to Seattle, and I'm your host, Jason Rigden. On this episode, I have Keith Kyle from the Seattle subway. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. So could you tell me a little bit about the Seattle subway?
At Seattle Subway, we're an all-volunteer nonprofit organization. We started in 2011, and we want what it sounds like we want. We are trying to get high-quality, high-speed, high-capacity rail transit as fast as possible and as high quality as possible to the city and the region.
So if I could just play devil's advocate, why don't we just build more roads?
Well, there's a little bit of a problem with that. One of them is we don't really have a whole lot of space to build more roads. The other one is roads have this thing called induced demand. So unless we're willing to knock down a bunch of buildings and build all of our roads wider, doing things like building highways wider is essentially solving the problem at the bottom of the funnel by making the top of the funnel wider.
And so you're actually asking for more than what is planned by like Sound Transit and stuff right now, right?
That's right. So we were part of the campaign to get ST on the ballot, ST3 on the ballot in 2016. When we started, it wasn't planned yet. We were part of making the ballot measure much, much bigger than it was going to be. Originally, it was going to be about half the size of what it originally was. And we advocate for quality as a central component in the transit that gets built. So we talk about grade separated transit as being how we want to go to make sure that transit gets people where they need to get quickly and efficiently. So now, however, once the ST3 planning process is done, which is going to be this month, we're looking at the future. We're looking at ST4, and we have a vision map up for kind of what the whole region might look like. But for ST4, we're focusing on Seattle. We don't think the region is probably ready to move forward on the timeline that we're talking about, which is going to be 2024 as for another vote. But Seattle has a lot of transit needs. There's huge demand for transit here, and there's some pretty large underserved corridors in Seattle that we really should be looking at for expansion.
Yeah, you have a map on your website of kind of like your, what would you call it? Like your proposed transit system?
So it's our vision map. It's kind of a mixture of what does exist, what's going to exist, and then what we think should exist. And we didn't really just throw lines in a map. We've looked at a lot of planning work that's happened in Seattle over the last couple of decades, and it's kind of come together from that. And then some of it is kind of community developed. So over the years, people come to us and say, hey, why isn't there a line here? And we'll look at it and it'll kind of go through just a process internally with us and with people who comment on our Facebook page to where we think, yeah, this is worth looking at and talking about and advocating for with Sound Transit and with the city in general.
And really is kind of like a 21st century system. Like it's kind of, when I look at it, I'm like, this is my dream. It's quite wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the map really sells the vision because people can understand it and they get what it does. It gets you around town quickly. And right now, that's not really true most places. You can get where you need to go on the buses, but sometimes it's going to take you a long time to do it. And some of the lines, particularly the ones that are going to go through pretty tortured choke points in our system, will feel, practically like teleporting. I mean, I think for people who used to take the bus from Capitol Hill to UW, getting there, and I believe the train takes just over 3 minutes now. Might as well be teleporting. I took the old 49, and I could tell you it took many times that amount of time to get between those 2 points. Similar thing for Ballard to UW. It's going to be a 7-minute train. That bus can take 45 minutes at rush hour right now. So you're talking about massive quality increases that come with investing in a system like this, and also massive capacity increases. You don't have to worry about how many buses you have, which is increasingly a problem. We have capacity issues with our metro system.
Well, a lot of people seem to say that we shouldn't be putting money into rail. We should be focusing it on buses. What do you say to those folks?
I think why not now GIF? Or I'm sorry, why not both GIF? Yeah, I think rail is a long-term solution. It takes a long time to build. and we should be looking for the highest capacity needs for where we build rail. But we also need buses. Our bus system moves an enormous number of people every day. But we are getting to the point where there aren't really any low-hanging fruit for a bus system anymore. Each kind of next step we're going to take with our bus system is going to require a lot of effort at the street level to improve. I mean, if you think about where the choke points are we, for instance, going to take a lane out of the Ballard Bridge and make it bus only? Are we going to do things like get rid of all the parking in Wallingford on 45th to make the 44 go faster? I tend to think that we're not going to do either of those things. And if we were, it would be enormously beneficial to buses, but it would also slow down traffic a lot. So, I think investing in rail long term just makes more sense for capacity, but it's part of a network. So, as we make these rail investments, it makes the buses work better too. So that's what we're starting to see, those kind of duplicate effects. Like when ULink opened, we're currently the fastest growing transit ridership in the country the last several years. And ULink opening opened up a lot of opportunities for buses in Northeast Seattle to get rerouted. And that's been a really popular reroute after some arguing to make it happen. So it's both together is really the way to the future.
And why do a subway system? Why not do like a monorail or some other kind of elevated train system?
Yeah, we say the word subway as a statement of quality, not necessarily meaning that it needs to be underground. Subway, in terms of quality, means grade separated. So even New York subway system has a lot of above ground and elevated rail in it. We consider, for instance, from downtown to UW to be subway quality rail. We don't think that of the Rainier Valley. So the Rainier Valley has a bunch of grade crossings, which is something we advocate against for future extensions. We want to see rail that cannot be stopped by a car.
Yeah, we've had a number of incidents with that.
There's been a number. I mean, it's actually less over time. It's kind of like this almost general learning that happens over time. But in the early days of the system, there were quite a few cases where people really just didn't want to pay attention to that light or tried to gun it through after the light turned red and paid the price.
So one thing that I run into when I talk to people about transit is, why haven't we done this already? Why are we so behind?
Well, we started trying to get rail transit in Seattle, and I'll specify subway quality. We had a pretty big streetcar system at one point, but subway quality rail, the first big attempt to do that was in 1912. It was a system called the Bogue system. It was amazing. It's the one that I'm most upset didn't pass. It would have also made an amazing downtown layout. It was by the Olmsted brothers and included an integrated park system as well. Really, really cool. Lost because Pioneer Square business owners weren't interested in it. And then there's been a lot of other attempts. The most notable that people always bring up is 1968 for forward thrust, which needed to win at a supermajority, or a plurality rather. So it needed a 60% vote in 1968. I think it lost by 1 point or 2 points by getting 58% of the vote. And that was going to be an 85% federally funded system. Atlanta got that system. Then they came back and tried again in 1970. It failed again, and DC got that system. And so then there was a period where Seattle wasn't growing that much, so people weren't really thinking about rail that much. Then fast forward, Sound Transit started in 1996. And then we started actually building rail, and then there was a lot of growth here. There was the started and failed monorail attempt, which was a group of activists that tried to make something happen quickly, which we can certainly relate to. Some of the original founding members of Seattle Subway also advocated for the monorail before that. But we took some lessons learned from what didn't work with the monorail, and moved forward with our advocacy work to expand the system.
So we're looking pretty much around the corner. We're going to have rail service to the east side. How do you think that's going to affect the regional like kind of opinion for rail service.
I think Northgate is also huge. It's 3 stops. It's going to mean just the connectivity. Every one of the stops is really good. Every one of the stops is both a destination and a starting point for people. People want to go to 65th to go to Green Lake. People want to go to Northgate. People want to go to the U District. It totally enables a massive bus redesign, the entire North End, because you're going to be talking about 12-minute travel times from Northgate to downtown all the time, both directions, but also really, really fast trips to the U District from Northgate or from Capitol Hill, downtown. Just all of that will work incredibly well. Then on the east side, when that opens up, that's going to be huge. I mean, I think people on the east side being able to casually use Link to get downtown quickly or just to get around the east side quickly will really be a great advertisement for rail expansion in general, which is part of why we're focused on 2024. We'll have just opened a lot of rail. So it's a really good time. People will be excited about it. What's possible will kind of, just as when ULink opened, I think it's the first time people really kind of, a lot of light bulbs for people who weren't converted yet went on when they were like, oh, it's UW to downtown in 6 minutes. Oh, light bulb. Same thing with the east side and getting rail. Bellevue to the ID, I think, is 19 or 20 minutes. And so you're talking about a lot of capacity, good speed, reliability. All of the good things about a good rail transit system are going to be there in East Link and Northgate Link, and people are really going to like it. And they already want more. We think that feeling will be amplified.
Yeah, it really is a magical experience, like you're saying earlier, like it's being teleported. I mean, for me, I've always lived in this area, so I've never experienced like a good like subway or transit system. So just experience, like you're saying, going from like, Capitol Hill to the U District is just an amazing experience. I think as more people experience that, support will just increase and increase.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we've seen. I mean, when we started out in 2011, it's people were still kind of in a mode where they were like, well, what about the monorail? We had passed in 2008 ST2. And then, we kind of kept at it, and then, Seattle was growing and more people were moving here from places that did have good rail systems, and more people were riding Link regularly as it existed then. And, even more and more people liked it. And then ULink opened, and that was just an explosion of interest. Then we passed ST3 region-wide without opening up East Link or opening up any of the lines that go further out into the suburbs, because it became so apparent that we needed expansion, that we need that capacity, that people were willing to take that leap of faith. So I think by 2024, there's not going to be a whole lot of faith you need in order to want more of rail. More people around the region are going to have that experience of riding it and understand its value.
So what are some of the threats that this kind of transit system is facing right now?
Well, we have, as a region, always had a very vocal minority of people who hate transit. One of those people is Tim Eyman. Tim Eyman's going to try to pass $30 car tabs again. He's done this before. It cut road funding statewide and transit funding. Same thing again. This would cut transit. It will cut ST3. It would cut road funding statewide for maintenance. And that's a pretty big threat. So I haven't seen the numbers on that one, but you're talking about cutting the package by billions of dollars and having to reconsider what could be built as part of the ST3 package because of it. Then other threats. There's also at this legislative level, we're now in our third session of, I believe, defeating a plan to change the car tabs without backfilling the funding. I believe that's gone down, though technically it still could sneak in, but I think it's dead. And so that would also hurt. And the plans are different. Some of them would cut as little as $1.8 billion and as much as $8 billion, depending on which version of the plan you're talking about. So if you did that and didn't find other funding, Sound Transit would have to talk about either extending timelines or cutting projects. So those are pretty big threats. Also, there are threats that aren't political. There's threats like construction costs going up really rapidly. That's happened. Land prices have gone up really rapidly. If those don't cool down in this time period, then we could be in a situation where it's harder for Sound Transit to deliver on projects. I think that they have done a really good job with their finance plan and a really good job with being conservative and kind of what they've told people they can do. So I have a high level of trust that they're going to deliver on those projects. But these are real risks when you're talking about doing mega projects. They've been successfully doing them for a long time. So I think people have gotten to a point where they're lulled into not thinking about the risks as much, but they're still there.
And what can citizens do to help support this kind of transportation system?
There's a lot of things that you can do. One of them is, we put out information regularly about when there's a political risk to Sound Transit or to the plan. So if you want to keep abreast of that and join in when we're commenting on something, you can get on our email list from our website at seattlesubway.org, I should say. And also, there's just a lot of opportunities to move in the future. We're going to start an ST4 campaign soon. And so just being vocal to politicians and letting them know that you want expansion, that you're thinking about the future, and that you would like to see us expand green transportation region-wide means a lot. We're a grassroots organization, and we get our power from the fact that people agree with us. So we don't just come up with something and people and have to convince everyone. The reason that we've been able to be successful is we say things that people agree with, and then they tell politicians, I agree with those people.
And where can people learn more about your organization?
So we're the most active on Facebook. So if you go, it's just Seattle Subway at Facebook. We're also fairly active on Twitter, and the same. We're just straight Seattle Subway is our Twitter handle. And if you'd like to sign up for our mailing list, it's seattlesubway.org. And we have a bunch of info, and you can sign up to volunteer with us as well. We are an all-volunteer organization. And if you wanted to give us some money, that'd be great too, because we run on a very small budget, but it helps us keep running and keep doing what we do.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
This has been Talk to Seattle, and I've been your host, Jason Rigden. If you want to support the show, please go to talktoseattle.com/support.